I don't think we've heard a speech like that in the European Union since what I see as the bad old days of Mitterrand, Kohl and Jacques Delors. This was all out there. We're going for a full United States of Europe, one strong president, a finance minister that should intervene in people's economies, strong European army, active foreign policy, more in every regard. And I suppose you could say there's a certain intellectual honesty to it. You know, the Brits are leaving, it's full steam ahead. I thought the most worrying bit was, and I've been worried about this for nearly 20 years, they want to contest the next European elections on the basis of pan-European passes funded by the European Union. And the problem with that is Juncker said we don't want to fund extremists. Define an extremist. I know this place. Anybody that puts up any genuine democratic opposition to the project is deemed an extremist. And I think you're going to see, I genuinely believe you're going to see, an all-out assault on genuine democracy across the European Union.
For the ALDE group, the floor to Mr. Verhofstadt.
A lot has changed, in fact, in the meanwhile, in the Union last year. In August, for example, 2016, it was Mr. Hofer who said that he wanted to take Austria out of the euro and the Union. And 5 months later, after his defeat, he said exactly the opposite. He changed his mind and he said, no, we want to stay in the euro and in the Union. And then in March of this year in the Netherlands, it was Mr. Wilders who promised a spring of populism, and what he created, he reaped the opposite. It were the pro-European parties who won the election. And in France, exactly the same. It was Emmanuel Macron who won the campaign with a pro-European program. And since then, even the Front National doesn't want to exit the euro and the Union anymore. And even in Hungary, Viktor Orban is piping down. He accepts now the authority of the European Court of Justice. And he said, I think 2 days ago, on a radio interview, that no way that ever Hungary would leave the Union. So I want to say, in fact, at the occasion of this State of the Union, Jean-Claude, to Mr. Hofer, to Mrs. Le Pen, to Viktor Orban, welcome to the side of reason. Even when we know, all of us, that is not that they have changed their mind, it's not by conviction that they have changed their mind, but by fear of losing votes that they have changed their mind now. And the only way, or the only one for the moment, who still doesn't get it, I think, is Mr. Farage. He is still going on. He said last weekend he called the German EFD to campaign on Brexit. I think it's a fantastic advice to campaign on Brexit. You have to keep up the good work, Nigel. I hope they take it, but unfortunately I don't think that they are so stupid to do that in Germany with the EFD. And because, let's be honest, it's clear what our citizens want. They don't want to destroy Europe. They want to reform Europe. But to destroy it, no bloody way. That is the message of our citizens. And colleagues, and that is what I like so much in the State of the Union this year by Jean-Claude Juncker, let's not make the mistake to think, okay, yeah, the war is over. We have won a few elections in a number of countries, and now the wind is blowing in the right direction. No, what the people want is not to continue with this Europe. They want the reformed European Union. 73% of our citizens want more European action on the side of migration. Uh, 75% want more European action against climate change. The same number want a European army. And at the same time, even more Europeans want European capacities and capabilities in the fight against terrorism. Europe, dear colleagues, is more than the sum of 27 national democracies. We are more than that. We are, in fact, a democracy on a European scale, also to defend our values and our principles outside the Union, but also inside the Union. This European democracy is necessary, for example, to withstand alt-right governments like we see today, also in Poland and in Hungary, would think in fact that Trump, with his white supremacy, is the example. Well, that will never be the example in whatever member state in the European Union. And for that reason, we have to create this European democracy with a transnational, in fact, responsibility. Because we need, as Emmanuel Macron has said it, near to the Acropolis, because we need to be the counterweight of all these developments and autocratic leaders worldwide.
Ladies and gentlemen, and the first speaker is Mr. Synadinos. Thank you, President. I listened to what you said, Mr. Juncker, very carefully. And it sounded as if you were promising paradise to us in Europe. But if you look at what the present European Commission has done, is produce unemployment, poverty, migration, and it's failed to address any of these problems, as well as the possible entry of Islamist terrorists into Europe. We need to have a more people-centred approach to Europe. People are not happy with the way things are going, and we're fed up with the disastrous results of your globalised policies. We have democratically elected governments in Poland and Hungary, and they are governing in the interests of their people. The Greeks, the Poles, the Hungarians, including the Brits who voted to leave the European Union, don't want more or less Europe. They want a more democratic Europe, a safer Europe, and one that respects national sovereignty and respects other member states. Thank you.
Honourable De Graaff.
Mr. De Graaff.
Mr. President, some seem to be saying that things are getting better in the European Union. They're closing their eyes or living in Never Never land. Islamist countries are sending large numbers of people to our shores, and every day men or women and children are raped by immigrants in our cities, by immigrants of Islamic origin. There's no safety or security in the European Union, and this Parliament is full of bleeding hearts. You're still closing your eyes to the dangers of Islam, and you're spending millions for the Coast Guard and defending our borders, and it's not enough. There's a problem of debt, there's a problem of unemployment, and the European Union is losing market share internationally. So things aren't going great in the European Union. In the interim, the UK has taken to a lifeboat and left the Titanic. Eastern countries are engaging in, and countries near us are engaging in all sorts of dictatorial acts and witch hunts.
And now for the EFDD, the floor goes to Mr. Farage.
Mr. Juncker, that was the most open, honest and truly worrying speech I've heard in my long years in this place. The message is very clear. Brexit has happened, full steam ahead. So new plans. There's to be one powerful president for the whole of the European Union, a finance minister with fresh powers to, as you say yourself, intervene as and when he sees necessary, a stronger European army in a militarised European Union with a stronger and perhaps more aggressive foreign policy too, and more Europe in every single direction, and all of it to be done without the consent of the people. Your plan to fight the next European elections with cross-European, pan-European lists funded by the European Union, but not, as you said, to fund extremists, means what we will find is genuine democratic parties of opposition will not be able to compete in elections on the same playing field. It is reminiscent of regimes of old. Indeed, the way you're treating Hungary and Poland already must remind them of living under the Soviet communists when you attempt to tell them how they should run their own countries. All I can say is thank God we're leaving. But you've learnt nothing from Brexit. If you'd given Cameron concessions, particularly on immigration, the Brexit vote, I have to admit, would never, ever have happened. And yet, the lesson you take is you're going to centralise, you're going to move on to this new, I think very worrying, undemocratic union, and you're deluding yourself, Mr Verhofstadt, if you think that the populist wave, as you define it, is over. If these plans of Mr Juncker's come to fruition, far from the populist wave being over, I doubt it's even begun.
Pleased that you think everything in the EU garden is rosy. There's no mention of the 50,000 jihadis waiting to blow us up that are going through your failed immigration policies. No mention of your failed immigration policies and the marauding migrants breaking into our countries. At least the Eastern European countries have got the right idea. No mention of your failed youth employment schemes. But there is good news. In the UK, we have record employment despite Brexit. We've got record inward investment despite Brexit. Volume of output is the highest in 20 years, despite Brexit. And Bill Gates said that despite Brexit, Britain still can lead in the science and technology institutes. And our order books are the highest in 30 years, despite Brexit. The City of London is still #1, despite Brexit. So sorry to invade your space, Mr Juncker, but you and the EU and your ideas are really past their sell-by date.